The horizon of human potential extends far beyond the conventional expectations of aging, offering a future where the mind does not merely endure the passage of time, but actively thrives within it. A robust memory and a vibrant cognitive state are not reserved solely for the young, nor are they accidents of genetics that one must helplessly await. The prevailing narrative often suggests that cognitive decline is an inevitable companion to adding years to one's life, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of forgetfulness and mental fatigue. This widely held belief ignores the profound capacity of the brain to reshape itself when engaged with intentionality and compassionate awareness. By shifting the relationship with one's own consciousness, it becomes possible to transform daily habits into powerful architectural tools that reinforce neural pathways and sustain vitality. Drawing upon the insights of John Kabat-Zinn and the principles of mindfulness, this journey reveals how the quality of attention determines the quality of retention. It offers a structured path to not only preserve memory, but to fall awake into the richness of every moment, turning the act of remembering into a natural byproduct of living fully. Awakening the hippocampus through radical presence, the physiological foundation of memory lies deep within the brain structures, particularly the hippocampus, a region highly sensitive to the effects of stress and inattention. Modern neuroscience aligns with the teachings of Kabat-Zinn to suggest that the brain remains plastic and capable of growth well into the later decades of life, provided it receives the correct stimuli. The phenomenon of neuroplasticity allows neurons to forge new connections and strengthen existing ones, but this process requires the active ingredient of sustained attention. When an individual operates in a state of chronic distraction or continuous partial attention, the neural signals are too weak to etch a lasting impression upon the synaptic landscape. The practice of mindfulness serves as a rigorous form of mental training that physically alters the brain, increasing the density of gray matter in areas associated with learning and memory. It is not merely a relaxation technique, but a mechanism for recruiting the brain's resources to be fully present for the encoding process. A common mechanism that undermines memory in those over 50 is not a failure of storage, but a failure of initial registration due to the absence of true presence. The brain cannot recall what it never truly acknowledged in the first place, much like a camera that fails to capture an image because the shutter was never opened. The concept of falling awake implies snapping out of the trance of automaticity that characterizes much of modern adult life. When a mind is constantly projected into the future or ruminating on the past, the present moment, the only place where memory is formed, slips by unrecorded. Kabat-Zinn emphasizes that this lack of awareness is often mistaken for memory loss, when in reality, it is a deficit of attention. By cultivating a non-judgmental awareness of the here and now, the individual signals to the hippocampus that the current experience is significant and worthy of retention. This process of strengthening attention begins with the recognition of the wandering mind and the gentle, firm return to the immediate experience. It is natural for the mind to drift, yet the act of noticing the drift and guiding the attention back is where the cognitive heavy lifting occurs. Each repetition of this cycle acts like a repetition in a gym, building the mental muscle necessary for holding focus on a name, a location, or a task. The approach is not about forcing the mind into submission, but rather inviting it to inhabit the body and the senses fully. When the individual learns to anchor attention in the breath or the sensation of gravity, the background noise of anxiety quiets down, allowing the signal of the memory to come through with greater clarity. The reduction of cortisol, a stress hormone that is known to atrophy the hippocampus, is a direct physiological benefit of this shift in stance. Consider the everyday scenario of placing a set of keys on a table upon entering the home. In a typical state of mindlessness, the individual might be mentally replaying a conversation from work or planning dinner while the hand mechanically drops the keys. Later, the brain has no record of the event because the conscious mind was elsewhere. By applying the principle of presence, The person pauses for a fraction of a second to feel the weight of the keys, hear the sound of metal hitting the wood, and visually register the location. This momentary pause creates a distinct cognitive timestamp, transforming a fleeting action into a solid memory. The simple act of attending to the mundane elevates it to the level of the memorable, proving that memory problems are often attention problems in disguise. It is important to distinguish this mindful state from hypervigilance or the strain of trying too hard to remember, which can be counterproductive. Striving creates tension, and tension constricts the cognitive fluidity required for effortless recall. Kabat-Zinn often points out that trying to force a result creates an obstacle, whereas letting go into the experience facilitates the natural functioning of the mind. The goal is not to police every thought, but to cultivate a spacious awareness that includes the intention to remember without the anxiety of forgetting. This balance allows the brain to operate at optimal efficiency, using less energy to achieve greater clarity. There are limitations to this approach, particularly when underlying organic conditions or severe sleep deprivation are present, as mindfulness cannot cure all biological deficits. However, even in cases of mild cognitive impairment, the reduction of secondary suffering, the stress and panic about forgetting, can significantly improve overall functioning. The practice provides a buffer against the anxiety that often exacerbates memory lapses, creating a cycle of calm that supports better cognitive performance. It shifts the focus from a fear-based relationship with the aging brain to one of curiosity and care. The cultivation of presence is a lifelong discipline that pays dividends in the currency of cognitive reserve. By treating every moment as if it really mattered, the individual trains the brain to remain alert and engaged. This investment in the present moment ensures that the neural machinery remains oiled and responsive. The brain, much like the body, follows the principle of use it or lose it, and mindfulness is the ultimate form of engagement. The architecture of the brain responds to the demands placed upon it, reinforcing the pathways that are used most frequently. If the demand is for distraction, distraction becomes the default mode. If the demand is for presence, presence becomes the baseline. This structural change is the physical manifestation of the mental habit. The transition from a distracted mind to a collected mind is not instantaneous, but occurs through the accumulation of mindful moments. The cumulative effect of these moments is a robust, resilient memory system that defies the stereotypes of aging. What meaningful detail did I miss today by not being fully there? Sensory anchoring and the art of vivid encoding the human brain relies heavily on sensory input to tag and file experiences for later retrieval, a process that can be significantly enhanced through the deliberate engagement of the five senses. Kabat-Zinn's exploration of mindfulness often utilizes the example of eating a raisin with full conscious awareness to demonstrate how sensory immersion transforms a mundane activity into a vivid, unforgettable event. When the individual engages sight, smell, touch, taste, and hearing, the brain creates a multidimensional memory trace that is far more durable than a purely intellectual concept. For those over 50, relying solely on abstract thought to store information becomes less efficient, whereas sensory anchoring leverages the brain's evolutionarily ancient and robust processing centers. This method turns the act of remembering from a passive hope into an active, creative construction. Encoding a memory is similar to placing a hook in a wall. The more secure the hook, the heavier the weight it can hold. Sensory details act as the screws that fasten the hook to the mental landscape. When an individual meets a new person, the name often vanishes instantly because it is stored merely as an auditory soundbite in a short-term buffer. To make the name stick, the mind must attach it to concrete sensory data: the color of the person's shirt, the texture of their voice, the firmness of their handshake, or the scent of the room. This technique, grounded in the concept of unified awareness, encourages the individual to inhabit the experience completely. The brain is forced to wire the abstract name together with these tangible inputs, creating a web of associations that makes retrieval much more likely. The mechanism behind this involves cross-modal processing, where neurons in visual, auditory, and kinesthetic cortices fire simultaneously, binding the information together. This synchronization is strengthened by the non-judgmental observation that characterizes mindfulness practice. Instead of analyzing the experience or comparing it to the past, the individual simply observes the sensory data as it unfolds. This purity of observation reduces the cognitive load, allowing the brain to devote its full energy to the encoding process. It is a shift from thinking about life to actually sensing it. An applied scenario can be found in the common struggle to remember whether a daily medication has been taken. The routine nature of the task makes it prone to the autopilot mode where memories are not formed. By bringing a deliberate sensory focus to the action, the individual can transform it. The person might feel the cold smoothness of the glass, hear the specific rattle of the pill, and notice the sensation of the water temperature. This sensory ritual creates a distinct event in the timeline of the day, distinguishing today's dose from yesterday's. It is the quality of the attention brought to the sensation that makes the difference. However, it is crucial to acknowledge that sensory processing can slow down with age, requiring a more deliberate and slower pace to achieve the same result. The rush of modern life often forces individuals to skim over the surface of their senses, leading to a shallow depth of processing. Kabat-Zinn suggests that slowing down is an act of sanity that allows the body and mind to synchronize. By decelerating the intake of information, the individual gives the sensory systems the time they need to register the data fully. This is not a sign of decline, but a strategic adaptation to ensure quality over quantity. Reflective thought suggests that the richness of memory is directly proportional to the richness of the sensory experience during the initial event. A life lived in the head, disconnected from the body, leaves a faint trace, while a life lived through the senses leaves a deep impression. This approach requires a willingness to be intimate with the physical world, to touch and be touched by the environment. It transforms the mundane environment into a playground for cognitive training. One limitation of this method arises in environments of sensory overload, where the brain can become overwhelmed by too much input. In a chaotic setting, the challenge is to narrow the focus to a single anchor rather than trying to take in everything at once. The skill lies in the ability to direct the flashlight of attention to a specific sensation, using it as a tether to the present moment. This selective attention protects the brain from fatigue while still ensuring that the key information is encoded. The practice of sensory anchoring ultimately serves to re-enchant the world, making the ordinary appear extraordinary through the lens of close attention. It combats the dullness that often accompanies routine and invigorates the neural networks responsible for processing novelty. By tricking the brain into perceiving the familiar as new and vibrant, the individual stimulates the release of neurotransmitters that support memory consolidation. The integration of sensory awareness in a daily life does not require extra time, only a different kind of orientation. It is a shift from doing to being, where the activity of the moment is fully inhabited. This embodiment is the secret to a memory that feels alive and accessible. The brain thrives on the rich diet of sensory data, growing stronger with every moment of true contact. What sensation am I ignoring right now that could anchor me here? Cultivating beginner's mind to disrupt autopilot, the accumulation of experience and expertise, while valuable, can lead to a cognitive state where the brain operates on a highly efficient but forgetful autopilot. Kabat-Zinn emphasizes the importance of cultivating shoshin, or beginner's mind, a concept that encourages viewing experiences as if for the first time, free from the expectations and filters of the past. For the aging brain, autopilot is a double-edged sword. It conserves energy but prevents the formation of new neural pathways because the brain stops paying close attention to what it thinks it already knows. To build a robust memory, the individual must actively disrupt these automated routines and reintroduce the element of novelty that signals the brain to wake up and pay attention. The neurological mechanism at play is the brain's response to prediction errors or unexpected stimuli. When a routine is perfectly predictable, the brain releases very little dopamine and essentially goes into a sleep mode regarding the details of the task. However, when the individual adopts a beginner's mind, they deliberately look for nuances and differences, mimicking the state of novelty. This engagement stimulates the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex, areas critical for memory and executive function. It is a way of artificially inducing the learning state of a child, where the world is fresh and every detail is significant enough to be recorded. Breaking the pattern of autopilot can be achieved through small, deliberate changes in daily habits. A person might choose to brush their teeth with a non-dominant hand, a simple act that forces the brain to abandon its efficient motor program and engage in conscious control. This surge of focus requires the recruitment of new neural circuits, increasing blood flow and electrical activity in the brain. Similarly, taking a new route to the grocery store or rearranging the furniture in a room disrupts the brain's spatial map, forcing it to re-navigate and update its internal model of the world. These micro-challenges act as potent fertilizers for neuroplasticity. In the context of social interaction, beginner's mind prevents the individual from assuming they know what a partner or friend is going to say before they say it. This assumption often leads to tuning out during conversations, resulting in a failure to remember the details of the dialogue later. By listening with the openness of a beginner, without an agenda or a prepared response, the individual hears the actual words rather than their own projection. This deep listening not only improves relationships, but significantly enhances auditory memory retention. There is a counter-argument that routine provides necessary structure and security, especially as one ages, and that constant disruption can be unsettling. It is true that total chaos is detrimental to cognitive function. The strategy is not to dismantle all structure, but to introduce controlled doses of novelty within a safe framework. The goal is flexibility, not instability. It is about finding the balance between the comfort of the known and the stimulation of the unknown. A practical application involves the way one consumes information. Instead of passively scanning headlines or watching the same type of television programs, the individual might engage with a subject completely outside their usual sphere of interest. Reading an article about astrophysics or learning the basics of a new language forces the brain to grapple with unfamiliar concepts and vocabulary. This cognitive strain is actually a sign of growth, much like the physical strain of lifting a weight. The effort required to understand something new is what keeps the memory system sharp. The attitude of the beginner is one of curiosity rather than expertise. When a mind thinks I know this, it closes down. When it thinks I wonder what this is, it opens up. This openness is essential for memory because it allows new information to enter without being immediately categorized and dismissed. It fosters a fluid intelligence that is adaptable and resilient. By consciously stepping out of the river of habit, the individual reclaims agency over their cognitive life. The days stop blurring together into a single indistinguishable mass and begin to regain their distinct textures. This differentiation is crucial for episodic memory, the ability to recall specific events in time. Ultimately, the practice of beginner's mind is a declaration of vitality. It refuses to accept that the world has been fully explored or that learning has concluded. It keeps the spirit young and the neurons firing, turning ordinary days into adventures of perception. Why do I assume? I already know what will happen next. The serenity of retention and vitality, the culmination of these practices, leads to a profound understanding that the health of the memory is inextricably linked to the emotional state of the individual. Chronic stress and the relentless pressure to perform are toxic to the brain, flooding the system with chemicals that inhibit the retrieval of information and damage the very structures needed for storage. The approach advocated by Kabat-Zinn places emotional regulation and the reduction of stress at the center of cognitive longevity. By fostering a relationship of acceptance and kindness toward oneself, the individual creates a biochemical environment in which the brain can thrive, repair, and function at its highest capacity. The journey to a better memory is not just about mental gymnastics. is about finding a place of deep peace from which the mind can operate clearly. The mechanism linking stress to memory failure is well documented. High levels of cortisol disrupt the communication between neurons and can lead to the shrinking of the hippocampus over time. Mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, offers a proven antidote, lowering cortisol levels and reducing the systemic inflammation that contributes to cognitive decline. When the mind is calm, the prefrontal cortex, the CEO of the brain, can better regulate attention and emotional responses. This emotional stability allows for a more efficient retrieval process, as the brain is not hijacked by the alarm bells of anxiety when a name or fact momentarily escapes the conscious mind. In the final synthesis, the pursuit of a better memory becomes a pursuit of a better life. The vitality that is sought after age 50 is found in the richness of the present moment, in the vividness of sensory experience, and in the freshness of a beginner's perspective. It is a shift from seeing memory as a hard drive to be filled to seeing it as a dynamic process of engagement with the world. The fear of forgetting is replaced by the joy of attending. This shift in perspective removes the heavy burden of self-judgment, allowing the natural intelligence of the brain to shine through without the interference of fear. A practical scenario of this integration is the response to a senior moment. Instead of spiraling into catastrophe thinking, this is the beginning of the end. The mindful individual pauses, takes a breath, and acknowledges the lapse with humor and compassion. This response de-escalates the stress reaction, often allowing the forgotten information to surface naturally once the tension has dissipated. The memory is often just below the surface, blocked only by the noise of the panic. By clearing the noise, the signal returns. This holistic approach acknowledges that the mind, body, and heart are not separate entities, but parts of a unified whole. To care for the memory, one must care for the self. The energy that is freed up from worrying about the future or regretting the past is now available to fuel the vitality of today. The brain is an organ that feeds on connection, meaning, and peace. The promise of this path is not the perfection of a computer-like recall, but the resilience of a mind that is flexible, awake, and deeply connected to life. It is a movement towards wisdom, where what is remembered is aligned with what is truly important. The individual learns to trust the unfolding of their own mind, knowing that they possess the tools to navigate whatever arises. In the end, tricking the brain into loving memory habits is simply a matter of falling in love with the moment. When a moment is loved, it is noticed. When it is noticed, it is remembered. The path to longevity is paved with these moments of clear, compassionate attention. What peace is available to me if I stop fighting my own mind?